Why Terence Crawford can't negotiate an Errol Spence Jr. fight on his own. Alright, y'all, so Terence Crawford says he's still interested in fighting Errol Spence Jr. next. But I'm not sure how much I actually believe that. And the fact that Terence Crawford does have a mandatory in Virgil Ortiz, I'm not sure if that can actually even happen next. He can still negotiate with Errol Spence to try to make a potential matchup. But the real question has to be is how long will Errol Spence stick around the welterweight division? And will the mandatory be Terence Crawford's next fight? Will the sanctioning bodies step in to force that fight to happen? The same way that they're doing the Errol Spence Jr. Now, you know, the Errol Spence Jr. situation is weird because the IBF is the belt that hasn't been defended in the longest. It's the first belt that Errol Spence actually picked up off of Kell Brook. Then he got the WBC title off of SHAWN Porter. And then he got the WBA title off of Urdanius Ugas. So I'm not sure how the WBC was able to step in and force Errol Spence to have to fight Keith Thurman. But you would have to believe if they can just step in and overstep other sanctioning bodies, why wouldn't the WBO step in and force Terence Crawford to defend his title against his mandatory? He only has one title, so it shouldn't be a hard decision to make, being that they overstep two other sanctioning bodies to force a Keith Thurman fight. You would think that, hey, the WBO shouldn't have a hard decision to make here. But when it comes to the negotiating process, can Bud negotiate an Errol Spence Jr. fight on his own? Me personally, I don't think so. I don't think Bud possesses the mental capacity to make the right decisions when it comes to the negotiating process. Number one, when you're negotiating for yourself, i.e. that you don't have a lawyer or a promoter or a representative, an agent, someone going in the room who's trying to represent you, then it becomes a problem because, especially in boxing, when there's an A-side, B-side situation, you're never going to put yourself second, especially if you're a champion. You're never going to put yourself second. So it's going to be impossible for Terence Crawford to negotiate this fight correctly, because he's always going to want what's best for him, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. No, there's nothing wrong with wanting what's best for yourself, trying to get the best deal for you. But in boxing, in boxing negotiations, the way it's always been, the way it's always going to be, is that there's an A side and a B side, and you have to negotiate your side based off of the A side and the B side. And if Terence Crawford is the B side in this situation, he can't negotiate himself a better price out of the Errol Spence Jr. fight at all. There's just no way it's going to happen. So when he goes into the negotiating room, he's going to say all the wrong things when it comes to trying to make this fight. He's going to say that he wants more money. He's going to say he wants to make decisions when it comes to the referee, the judges, when it comes to the venue, all those things he's going to want input on, because of his dealings with Bob Arum and Bob Arum running the whole show. Him being the biggest star under Bob Arum at the time, he's used to getting what he wants. So he's going to bring that type of mind state into the negotiating room, which will become a problem trying to negotiate a fight with a fighter who's more popular than you, who sells more pay-per-views than you, who has more titles than you. There is no negotiating power for Terence Crawford when it comes to making that fight. But since he's arguing for himself, he's not going to argue himself down, or he's not going to try to argue himself a B-side deal. He's going to keep trying to argue himself an A-side deal because that's what he's used to. So I don't think it's going to work, what he's trying to do. Other fighters are now coming out and voicing their opinion. You know, people that were once for Terence Crawford, like SHAWN Porter, they're starting to dial back their rhetoric a little bit because they're seeing the actual process of what Crawford is doing, and they know, based off their dealings with PBC and their dealings with Errol Spence, how the situation goes. And it's crazy because SHAWN Porter has a unique take on the situation, because Errol Spence was actually the B-side to SHAWN Porter, and he beat Shawn Porter. So, because Shawn Porter was more popular at the time, even though Errol Spence had already gotten a belt by then, he was still the B-side, I believe, in that fight because of the popularity. So, Shawn Porter definitely knows how the A-side, B-side situation really works and why it's the way it is. You know, I don't think Errol Spence had a problem with taking a smaller cut or not getting the venue he wanted. His main goal was getting the belt off of Shawn Porter. His main goal wasn't trying to get the highest payday for that fight, because he knew once I get the belt, then comes the money. You know, this is the thing that I dislike the most about Terence Crawford, is the fact he doesn't live in reality because of his dealings with Bob Arum. And Bob Arum, I know a lot of people don't want to believe that Arum padded his record, but Arum basically padded his record, and he made him more famous than he needed to be, and he overpaid him for that, which is great for a promoter to do. You know, this is boxing, where promoters are usually screwing over their fighters, which is another crazy thing about Terence Crawford. You would think that because Terence Crawford was being overpaid by Bob Arum, and Arum was giving him special treatment, Arum was padding his record, basically feeding him fights that he wasn't going to lose, why was Terence Crawford so angry with Bob Arum? And that should be another clue into why Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford is most likely never going to happen. Because if you're willing to turn your back on somebody who's basically got your best interests at heart, who's basically putting you in a better position, who's basically padded your pockets for less work, then how are you going to act when you're dealing with a company you're not signed to, when you're dealing with a fighter that's more popular, when you're dealing with a fighter with more titles, when you're dealing with a fighter that's worth more than you? It's never going to work, and you're never going to be able to negotiate that fight correctly. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that down in the comment section below. It's your boy Cardinal Red Sports. Holler at me on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You're more than likely to get a response on the tube. Holler at me over there. And we are Manny.
It's your boy Keys, neighborhood employee. Niggas knew that I was coming with fire. Y'all went up to my pie and up under a car. Your head under a tie, it's the S and the I. Player, we supposed to win. I'm in the booth focusing with coke in hand. Dude hate it when you see the chief running in. Ass mouth hurting like his wisdom teeth coming in. Now that's a roundhouse kick. Come round your house, letting rounds out quick. From Newburgh to downtown, it's that Midwest to down south shit. Y'all ain't fucking with. She chillin', saying tryna put the feel on the mouth. What's good? She nothing, saying tryna show his niggas how to ride.